So David, let's talk a little bit about the movement towards increased donor collaboration for digital global public goods.
Sure, thank you. So I'm going to make a couple corrections. One, I was never the director of USAID. But I was the director of the Office of HIV/AIDS, and I am so glad I never was the director.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so that's okay. I think the second is a correction to Noah, but just to let everyone know, I am not an expert on this topic. I got thrown into the deep end at Whiston House at the Wilton Park meeting last October, where I just kind of sat quietly and tried to soak it all in. And but emerged from that saying, well, I'm not an expert, but I can be useful. And from that, there was a sort of a side huddle of some of the donors attending a meeting. The meeting was about what's happening in Africa with digital health. It was so impressive. And as somebody who's worked in the development space for years, the thing I came away from that was, amazingly, that there are people in the developing world that are hungry to solve these problems and make this work. And as a development agency, that's what you look for. So I came away from that. But there was this huddle of the donors one evening, you know, and we had just heard a very, I think, sobering presentation on the fragmentation of health information systems. And including that Uganda had to declare a moratorium on mHealth systems because there were over 50 different systems at play in their health sector. Over 100 different systems at play in Tanzania. And all the donors were kind of looking at our shoes and feeling very embarrassed by it, and all doing our mea culpas. But it was actually the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Tim Wood said, let's get together with a few more of us and talk about this. And it's interesting that in the space of a week, I have been asked twice now to talk about this. So I guess when donors get together and try to coordinate themselves, and lo and behold, they emerge with consensus, I guess that's newsworthy. So so here we go again. I think the other thing I need to say is, there's a lot happening, and it feels like somebody lit a match under something, but I feel it's really important to give credit where it's due, in that this has been, what we're experiencing today is the result of a 20-year process of collaboration, of thought, of failed starts, useful things that we can build on. And I think the one piece that has really helped us, come out of the donors coordination meeting, was work that was done in the last 8 years on the principles for digital development. These are principles that go far beyond health, but laid out, sort of what a good system, what the components, what the specifications should look like of a good health system, addressing the privacy issues, addressing interoperability issues. So we didn't have to reinvent that. It had been worked on by 500 people over a number of years and signed off on donors and NGOs, and in fact this week we learned that finally the UK has endorsed these, and it's really the groundswell about these other principles made it possible for us to say there's one thing that's missing here to the donors, and what's missing here is a sense of how the donors interact with the host country. So the principles will be launched in October, but there's so many people involved in this. It's gone out on a number of listservs, and I think without too much work you can find it on the internet. But the main principle that we started with was, we will support a national strategy. We're not going to come in with our own ideas and our one-offs anymore. We will support a national strategy. Knowing that there may not be one, then if there isn't, then we will invest in whatever it takes to create a national strategy. Because in the absence of this overarching coordinating function, we are likely to make the same mistakes we've made the last 20 years. I think it's also important, as we point the fingers at ourselves and others, to appreciate that what got us to the wrong place was not necessarily ill intentions. It was what do we do with this new technology? We have these new tools. How do we do it? How do we use it? And I'm thinking of something I went through this weekend in my home. I'm a pack rat. And I've gone through kids with toys and all these sorts of devices that eventually break. But what's left behind is what is affectionately known as a wall wart. It's a thing you plug in the wall, a little black box, and a little wire that comes out, and you plug it into the answering machine or the toy or the cell phone. And I have saved many of these. And I was going through these, and I thought, oh, this could be useful someday. But I could sort of, as I went through this archaeology of my own junk drawer, I realized that a lot of these wall warts, the connection at the end was proprietary. And it only fit the thing it was bought for, and it would never fit anything ever again. But as I went through them, I saw over time there was this transition to, well, now it's all USB based. It's all 5 volts. It's all the same connector, unless it's an iPhone. And but the world has moved to that, and it's not that the Game Boy from the year 2000 was wrong or a bad thing. It was like we were trying to get to this point. And I think with digital health, we've come to a point where we've said, okay, we have let 1,000 flowers bloom, and we've learned a lot from that, but now is the time to make something useful for everybody. And this is a good time at USAID to be having these thoughts. Our new administrator, he's not that new anymore, so our administrator, Ambassador Mark Green, has set out 5 principles for the agency. Number 1 is we will foster self-reliance, and number 5 is we will protect the taxpayers' investments. The 2 through 4 are variations of capacity building. So these principles fit in very nicely with that, in that we need to build something that we can walk away from. We have built a lot of white elephants at great cost to the taxpayer. We don't get full value out of them. You'll get value if we can build something that will last. And I think we also have to realize this technology is not going to stop. So what looks good and useful right now could be very different a decade from now. But at least, we can be helpful if we stop doing the wrong thing. And I think that's where we landed. The principles, as I said, will be launched at the World Health Summit in Berlin in October. There is a bit of a snowball effect with people signing on and endorsing them. This morning we learned, yay, that Gavi and the Global Fund have endorsed these principles. So I would read the list there, but I'm sure I would leave somebody out and then I would get in trouble. But the point is that the U.S. government is on board. The advent of the World Health Assembly resolution was the impetus. Well, somebody said, well, then USAID has to have a position. Who can write a position? So folks in our shop wrote a position, and it basically became the basis of these principles. They were read aloud in Geneva at the executive board meeting, and so what we hear at WHA a couple weeks ago was heads of state using phrases we've never heard before. The word interoperability and other things, and it's very exciting. A time whose idea whose time has come makes us all look like winners. But I'll stop there, other than to say it's an exciting time for us. But we know that what we've done is the starting line. It's not the finish line; it's the starting line. But it's a necessary condition, and to have so many of the organizations that can move resources and influence what happens around the world sort of on the same page, and the same page is the autonomy of the host government, is very exciting. It's an exciting time to be involved in it.
That's great.